Do you believe you're free? I mean truly free, not just free in the sense that you can choose which flavor of coffee you'll order at Starbucks or which show you'll binge watch tonight. I'm talking about freedom of the mind, freedom of your choices, freedom from conditioning. Because if you take a hard look at how most of us live today, the picture starts to feel a little unsettling. Let's walk through a typical morning, and tell me if it sounds familiar. You wake up. The first thing you do, before your feet even hit the floor, is grab your phone. Your thumb scrolls almost automatically, chasing some piece of news, some new post, some little hit of novelty. Maybe you check your email, maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's Instagram. A few minutes go by. You tell yourself you're just catching up, but the truth is, you're already hooked before the day has even started. Then comes the coffee, your daily shot of caffeine and dopamine. You put on music, a podcast, maybe even a YouTube video while you get dressed. The silence feels too heavy, so you fill it without thinking. And then, on the way to work, you keep consuming, more scrolling, more voices in your earbuds, more distractions to carry you through the moments that might otherwise feel too still. Now pause for a second. In those rare times when you don't have a screen in your face or a voice in your ear, what happens? For many people, the silence feels unbearable. There's this creeping discomfort, an emptiness that rises up, almost as if your own mind is demanding you run from it. And so, what do? You reach for another distraction, another hit of pleasure, another escape from the void. Think about that carefully. We live in a society that constantly feeds us something new, something entertaining, something pleasurable. And yet, the more we consume, the emptier we feel when the noise finally stops. That's not freedom. That's dependency dressed up as choice. Pleasure in itself isn't the problem. In fact, pleasure is a natural mechanism of the human brain. It evolved to help us survive. It rewards us when we do things that keep us alive, eating, connecting, reproducing. But what happens when pleasure is no longer a tool for survival but the very prison we live in? What happens when your constant need to feel good becomes the invisible chain that keeps you docile, distracted, and controlled? That's where we are today. We're not dealing with Orwell's nightmare of 1984, where a government crushes every act of rebellion through fear, censorship, and violence. Instead, we're living closer to Aldous Huxley's vision in Brave New World, a world where people don't need to be forced into submission because they're too busy being entertained, too busy consuming, too busy loving their servitude. Huxley saw it nearly a century ago. The most effective form of slavery doesn't come with chains. It comes with pleasure. Look around at our culture. Entertainment is everywhere. It's in your pocket, in your home, in your office, in your car. The line between work and leisure is blurred because even when you're working, you're sneaking quick scrolls, responding to meaningless notifications, filling every gap with a drip of stimulation. We're constantly told that this is freedom, the freedom to choose from endless apps, endless content, endless convenience. But is that really freedom, or is it a clever illusion? If freedom means never being able to sit in silence, never being able to face boredom, never being able to control your own attention, then maybe we've redefined the word beyond recognition. Let me ask you this, if no one is forcing you to scroll for hours, why is it so hard to stop? If no one is threatening you to binge watch until 2 a.m, why do you feel powerless against the urge? If no one is pointing a gun at your head, demanding you check your phone every few minutes, then why does your hand still move almost automatically? The answer isn't that you're weak. The answer is that you've been conditioned. Conditioned by an environment designed to make you dependent, conditioned by a system that profits when you stay distracted, conditioned by a culture that confuses endless pleasure with true freedom. And here's the uncomfortable truth. When pleasure becomes the center of your life, when it becomes the foundation of how you spend your time, then servitude disguises itself as liberty. That's the paradox Huxley warned us about. A world where nobody rebels not because rebellion is crushed, but because rebellion never even crosses anyone's mind. Why would you revolt when you're entertained, when you're comfortable, when you're told that everything is fine as long as you can buy, click, watch, and consume? The prison doesn't need bars when it's lined with dopamine. So let me challenge you right here, right now. Take a brutally honest look at your daily routine. How many of your habits are genuine choices and how many are simply reflexes? How many of your pleasures are truly satisfying and how many just numb the boredom for a moment before leaving you emptier than before? When was the last time you sat in silence, no phone, no music, no screen, just you and your own mind? If the very thought of that feels unbearable, then ask yourself, is that freedom or is that dependency? This isn't about shaming you. This is about shaking you awake. Because the first step to reclaiming your freedom is recognizing when it's already been taken. Nobody had to chain you up, nobody had to threaten you, nobody had to censor your thoughts. All they had to do was give you endless entertainment, endless comfort, endless little pleasures that distract you from ever asking deeper questions. You don't need to be forced to obey when you've already been trained to love your servitude. So the next time you grab your phone without thinking, the next time you run from silence into the arms of distraction, remember this: the perfect slavery needs no chains. It only needs your willingness to escape discomfort at any cost. And if that's true, then freedom, real freedom, begins not with pleasure, but with the courage to face what lies beneath it. Pleasure in itself is not the enemy. Let's be clear about that. The ability to feel joy, satisfaction, delight, that's part of what makes us human. It's built into our biology for a reason. Pleasure tells us when we're on the right track. It rewards us for survival. When you eat a meal, when you connect with people you care about, when you achieve something meaningful, that sense of pleasure is a signal from your brain: this matters. Do more of this. But here's where things go wrong. What happens when pleasure stops being a guide and starts becoming the entire point of life? What happens when instead of serving you, it begins to control you? That's when pleasure stops being a gift and becomes a cage. Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, saw this trap coming long before smartphones, long before streaming services, long before TikTok or Instagram. He imagined a society where no one had to be forced into obedience because they were too busy chasing pleasure. In his world, whenever people felt the slightest hint of sadness, unease, or doubt, they reached for a drug called soma. One pill, and the discomfort was gone. One pill, and the pain evaporated. No suffering, no anxiety, no questions. On the surface, it looked like paradise: no one unhappy, no one angry, no one restless. But underneath, it was a nightmare, because no one ever grew, no one ever thought deeply, no one ever became free. They didn't need chains or guards because people loved their own imprisonment. They had traded depth for distraction, purpose for pleasure, freedom for comfort. Now fast forward to our world. We don't take soma, but don't tell me we don't have our own versions. You feel bored? You scroll social media. You feel rejected? Swipe on a dating app until somebody matches. You feel lonely? Put on Netflix and let the next episode autoplay. You feel stressed? Uber Eats, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram Reels, a drink, a smoke, a snack. Everything designed to give you a quick hit of dopamine and erase discomfort instantly. Just like soma, but disguised as freedom of choice. And here's the kicker: it doesn't feel forced. No one tells you that you must do this. It feels like you're the one choosing. You think you're in control. But are you really? Think about this in your own life. How many times do you reach for your phone when you're not even consciously choosing to? How often do you open an app, not because you want to, but because your brain is conditioned to expect something new, something stimulating? You're not even hungry for food, but you open the fridge out of habit. You're not even interested in the show anymore, but you let the next episode run because you don't want to deal with the silence. Does that feel like freedom, or does it feel like conditioning? And that's the trap. Pleasure, when it becomes constant, loses its meaning. The more you chase it, the less fulfilling it becomes. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. You get a spike of joy, but it doesn't last. You need more, and more, and more just to feel the same effect. It's like running on a treadmill that never stops. You're moving, but you're not actually getting anywhere. That treadmill is what keeps millions of people trapped today. They're running toward pleasure, but the finish line doesn't exist. And let's be honest, America is the perfect setting for this trap. We live in a consumer culture that markets pleasure as the ultimate goal. Fast food promises happiness in a paper bag. Streaming platforms sell you endless worlds to escape into. Advertisements tell you that every problem in your life can be solved with the right purchase, the right drink, the right product. You deserve it, you earned it, you need it right now. And while you're buying, consuming, and distracting yourself, something dangerous is happening. You're forgetting to ask deeper questions. Questions like, why am I here? What do I actually want? What am I building with my life? Huxley's world was terrifying because it wasn't about fear, it was about numbness. It was about people so distracted by constant comfort that they lost the ability to even notice their chains. Isn't that exactly what we're living today? People no longer ask whether they're truly happy. They just want to feel good in the moment. They no longer tolerate discomfort, so they numb it immediately. And by doing so, they lose the very muscle that makes us human, the ability to struggle, to endure, to reflect, to grow. Now ask yourself this, when was the last time you sat in discomfort without running from it? When was the last time you allowed boredom, sadness, or frustration to just exist without rushing to escape? If you can't remember, then maybe you're starting to see the cage. It's not metal, it's not concrete, it's not guarded by soldiers. It's invisible, built out of convenience, built out of distractions, built out of endless pleasures that seem harmless but slowly strip away your resilience. The scariest part? It doesn't feel like prison, it feels like freedom. But freedom without depth, freedom without meaning, freedom without silence is not freedom at all. So here's the choice you face: keep living in the cage, numbing every discomfort with another hit of dopamine, or start to question the very pattern you've been conditioned to follow. I'm not saying you need to throw away pleasure completely. I'm saying you need to take back control of it. Because pleasure, when it's in its rightful place, can enhance life. But when it takes the driver's seat, it becomes the bars of your prison. This is the truth most people don't want to face. It's easier to believe that comfort equals happiness, that distraction equals freedom, that consumption equals choice. But deep down, you already know something is wrong. You feel it in the silence you avoid, in the boredom you run from, in the emptiness that lingers after the pleasure fades. And until you face it, you'll remain stuck in the cage. So let me leave you with this thought: pleasure is not the problem, it's the position we've given it in our lives. The problem begins when pleasure stops being a gift and becomes a master. And once that happens, the question isn't whether you're free, it's whether you'll ever notice the cage around you. Why is it so hard to stop? Why, even when you tell yourself, I need to focus, I need to get things done, does your hand still drift toward your phone almost without permission? Why, even when you know that another hour of scrolling or another night of binging won't make you feel better, do you do it anyway? The answer isn't simply lack of discipline. It's deeper. You've been trained for this. Conditioned. Just like a lab rat in a maze that learns to hit the lever for food pellets, you've been taught to hit the screen for dopamine. And this conditioning doesn't happen by accident. It's built into the very structure of the world around you. Think back to when you were a kid. Did school teach you how to think critically? Did it teach you how to manage your mind, how to face silence, how to handle uncertainty? Or did it mostly train you to sit still, memorize, and repeat? The system wasn't designed to make you independent, it was designed to make you compliant. The educational system shaped you into someone who could follow instructions, not someone who could question the system itself. That was the first step. Then came the job market. Most workplaces aren't built to encourage reflection or innovation. They're built to maximize productivity. To get you moving like a cog in a machine. Punch in, punch out, hit the deadlines, meet the metrics. The structure rewards output, not thought. And once again, you're conditioned, not to reflect, but to produce. Not to ask why, but to just keep grinding. Now add the culture of entertainment layered on top of that. Everywhere you turn, there's something designed to grab your attention. Social media apps engineered by some of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley whose job isn't to liberate you, but to keep you glued to your screen. Algorithms that study your behavior down to the millisecond, learning what makes you click, what makes you stay, what makes you come back for more. Every notification, every like, every short video is designed to trigger your brain's reward system, just like pressing that lever for the food pellet. You don't even realize it, but you've been trained to crave the next hit before the last one even fades. Let's be brutally honest here. When you get that notification ding, your body reacts before your conscious mind even decides. A little jolt of dopamine fires. Your heart rate spikes just a bit. Your hand reaches almost automatically. That's not freedom of choice, that's a reflex. That's conditioning. And the more it happens, the stronger the loop becomes. Your brain learns that discomfort, boredom, stress, loneliness should never be tolerated. Instead, it should be immediately soothed with stimulation. Over time, you lose the very ability to just sit with yourself. Silence feels unbearable. Introspection feels threatening. You're always running, always reaching, always distracting. Huxley called it hypnopedia in Brave New World, teaching people in their sleep with repeated messages until they believed them without question. Today, it doesn't happen in your dreams. It happens through repetition in your waking life. Ads that tell you happiness is just one purchase away. Notifications that remind you that your value is tied to likes and comments. Content feeds that serve you exactly what you crave before you even know you're craving it. It's not hypnosis in the literal sense, but the effect is the same. You're being programmed. Now, some people will say, well, no one is forcing me to use my phone. No one is making me stay on Netflix all night. And technically, that's true. But think about it, if you're so free, why does it feel so impossible to stop? Why do you feel anxious when your phone battery dies or when you leave it in another room? That's not choice. That's dependency born out of conditioning. And the system loves it. Because the longer you stay trapped in that cycle, the more your attention is harvested, the more your habits are shaped, the more you become predictable, controllable, profitable. Here's the scariest part. Conditioning doesn't just shape what you do. It shapes who you are. If every time you feel discomfort you immediately reach for distraction, then slowly your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. You stop building resilience. You stop developing patience. And eventually, you lose the ability to think critically about the system itself. Why question the rules when distraction is always easier? Why rebel when comfort is always within reach? That's the genius of this design. A dictatorship doesn't need to ban books or burn ideas if it can keep you too busy scrolling to ever open a book in the first place. So here's the real question, who benefits from this? Who gains when you can't stop scrolling? Who profits when your attention span collapses, when your tolerance for silence disappears, when your mind is trained to constantly seek stimulation? It's not you. You don't get richer. You don't get freer. You don't get more fulfilled. The winners are the corporations, the platforms, the advertisers. They get your time, your money, your focus. They're the ones who thrive when you're conditioned to stay in the loop. And that brings us to a critical turning point. If you don't see the conditioning, you'll never fight it. If you don't realize how reflexive your habits have become, you'll keep telling yourself stories about choice when the truth is you're just responding to the cues the system has trained into you. That's why awareness is the first step to freedom. To pause and say, wait a second. Am I really choosing this, or is this just a reflex I've been taught to obey? It takes courage to face this because it means admitting that much of what you thought was your choice wasn't truly yours. It was programmed. But the moment you see it for what it is, you begin to reclaim control. You begin to realize that the phone doesn't have to own your mind. The algorithm doesn't have to decide your mood. The culture doesn't have to define your values. Conditioning got you here. Awareness can get you out. And so the challenge is set. The question isn't whether you've been conditioned, you have. The question is whether you'll stay conditioned or whether you'll fight back. Because until you do, Every reflex, every distraction, every quick hit of dopamine will keep you exactly where the system wants you, docile, distracted, dependent. And if that's not a cage, I don't know what is. Imagine a world where nobody ever has to suffer. A world where every frustration is smoothed over, every anxiety numbed, every sadness erased at the push of a button or the swallow of a pill. At first glance, it sounds like heaven. No heartbreak, no stress, no struggle. But look closer. What happens to a person, or to a society, that never faces difficulty? What happens when every discomfort is eliminated before it can teach us anything? The answer is simple. That society becomes weak. That individual becomes fragile. And that fragility is exactly what makes us easier to control. Huxley understood this trap with chilling clarity in Brave New World. In his dystopia, people weren't forced to smile, they were engineered to. Pain didn't exist because any time it tried to surface, there was soma. One dose, and negative feelings vanished. No side effects, no resistance, just instant relief. People never had to wrestle with loss or struggle with meaning. They floated through life in a haze of shallow pleasures, sex, entertainment, consumption. But here's the problem. Without pain, there is no depth. Without struggle, there is no growth. The people in Huxley's world weren't free. They were stunted. Their humanity had been flattened into obedience, and the cost of all that comfort was their very strength. Now look at our own world. We don't take soma, but don't fool yourself, we've built a society full of its equivalents. We scroll through social media instead of confronting boredom. We swipe on dating apps instead of risking rejection in real life. We order fast food instead of cooking. We binge shows instead of sitting in silence. We drink, shop, eat, and consume our way out of discomfort. Every tool, every app, every platform promises the same thing: you'll never have to feel bad again. But in that promise lies the real danger. Because the more we escape discomfort, the less capable we become of facing it when it inevitably arrives. Think about how quickly small frustrations spiral today. Someone leaves a mean comment online, and suddenly it feels like a crisis. A minor setback at work turns into an emotional breakdown. A short wait in traffic makes us lose our minds. Why? Because we've been trained to believe that life should feel good all the time. And when it doesn't, we collapse. That's fragility. That's weakness disguised as freedom. The truth that no one wants to face is that pain has a purpose. Suffering is not pleasant, but it is powerful. It forges resilience. It teaches patience. It forces us to grow. Every challenge you've overcome in your life, think about it, was born from some form of discomfort. Struggling through heartbreak taught you about love. Losing a job taught you about persistence. Failing at something taught you about grit. Pain carves depth into the human spirit. It makes you stronger. But what happens when you eliminate it completely? You eliminate the very fuel that builds character. Look at how kids are raised today. Many parents, out of love, want to protect them from every discomfort. They step in to solve problems before the child can even struggle. They rush to make things easy. But in doing so, they rob that child of resilience. The first time real difficulty shows up later in life, the child crumbles. And in the same way, when society trains us to run from discomfort at every turn, we become collectively weaker. We're like muscles that never get used. Without resistance, without struggle, those muscles shrink. And when they shrink, control becomes simple. Because weak people don't fight back. Weak people settle. Weak people obey. Now, this isn't about glorifying pain or saying we should suffer for the sake of it. That's not the point. The point is that suffering is part of being alive, and if you strip it out completely, you strip out meaning along with it. Every hero you've ever admired, every story that ever inspired you, every achievement that ever mattered came from facing difficulty head-on, not avoiding it. And yet we're being taught that the goal of life is constant happiness, constant comfort, constant ease. That's not liberation, that's sedation. So let me ask you this: how do you react to discomfort in your own life? Do you see it as something to escape from immediately, or as something to wrestle with and learn from? Do you run from silence, from boredom, from struggle, or do you lean into it? Because the way you answer that question determines whether you grow stronger or weaker with every challenge you face. The scariest part of all this is how normal it feels. Nobody is holding you down, nobody is censoring you, nobody is putting chains on your body. You feel free. You feel like you're choosing this. But the more you avoid pain, the more you erode your own ability to resist. And the more fragile you become, the easier you are to control. That's how societies are tamed, not with violence, but with comfort. Not with threats, but with sedation. When people are too weak to handle suffering, they'll gladly accept the illusion of happiness, even if it costs them their freedom. So here's the challenge: don't run from discomfort. Don't treat it like the enemy. See it for what it is, a teacher. See it as the fire that forges resilience, as the weight that strengthens your inner muscle. Because if you avoid it at all costs, you'll trade strength for weakness, depth for shallowness, freedom for a cage lined with velvet. And once you do that, you won't even realize you've been trapped. The price of a world without pain isn't paradise. It's submission. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can stop being lulled to sleep by false comfort and start reclaiming the strength that only comes from struggle. Because discomfort is not the enemy, it's the doorway to real freedom. Let's get to the heart of it. What are you really chasing in life? Is it happiness, or is it meaning? Is it fleeting pleasure, or is it lasting purpose? Most of us will answer quickly, of course I want meaning, of course I want purpose. But if you step back and look at your daily choices, the reality often tells a different story. The truth is, we've been trained to believe that happiness equals a string of pleasurable moments, one after another, and that the absence of discomfort equals success. But here's the hard truth: pleasure without purpose leaves you empty. Meaning, not pleasure, is what sustains you. Think about it. Pleasure is always temporary. The dopamine hit from a like on social media lasts seconds. The excitement of a new purchase fades almost immediately. That perfect slice of pizza is amazing for a moment, but 20 minutes later you're hungry again. Every bit of pleasure requires renewal, and the more you chase it, the shorter the relief feels. That's why people can spend hours binge watching, days swiping, months shopping, and still feel restless, anxious, unfulfilled. Because pleasure is designed to disappear. It's not built to last. Now compare that with purpose. Purpose doesn't vanish the moment the rush is over. Purpose builds. Purpose anchors you. Purpose can carry you through storms that pleasure could never touch. When life collapses, pleasure won't save you. Meaning will. Ask any soldier who's been to war, any parent who's raised a child against the odds, any person who's clawed their way through tragedy, they'll tell you that the moments that defined them weren't easy. They were painful. They were difficult. They required sacrifice. But because they had a why, they could endure almost any how. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, saw this truth in its rawest form. Surrounded by death, starvation, and unimaginable suffering, he observed that the people who survived weren't the strongest or the smartest, they were the ones who found meaning. Some lived for the hope of seeing loved ones again. Some lived to complete a piece of work. Some lived because they believed their suffering itself could be given meaning. Frankl wrote that man can survive almost any condition if he has a purpose. Strip away purpose, and even the most comfortable life becomes unbearable. So let me ask you again, what gets you out of bed in the morning? Is it the promise of another distraction, another quick dose of dopamine, another weekend of numbing yourself with food, drinks, or screens? Or is it something bigger? Something that outlives the moment? Because here's the paradox: the pursuit of constant pleasure weakens you, while the pursuit of purpose strengthens you. Pleasure is easy. It asks nothing of you except indulgence. Purpose is demanding. It requires effort, sacrifice, discipline. But it's purpose that gives you depth. It's purpose that gives you resilience. And it's purpose that gives you freedom. American culture, for all its brilliance, often confuses these two. Our advertising, our media, our social platforms bombard us with the idea that happiness is the ultimate goal, and that happiness can be bought, consumed, or streamed instantly. But that's a lie. Happiness that depends on the next dopamine spike isn't happiness at all, it's dependency. And the tragedy is that so many people waste decades chasing pleasures that evaporate, while never investing in the slow, difficult, deeply rewarding work of building a life of meaning. Look back at your own story. What moments truly shaped you? Were they the times you were most comfortable? Or were they the times you were tested, stretched, challenged? The birth of a child, the moment you overcame failure, the struggle that demanded everything from you, those are the moments that define who you are. And those moments weren't pleasurable. They were hard. But they were meaningful. They mattered. And they left you stronger. Now imagine what happens when an entire society chooses pleasure over purpose. People become passive. They stop asking hard questions. They stop building legacies. They stop striving for anything greater than the next distraction. And when that happens, control becomes easy. Because people with purpose are dangerous to the system. They can't be manipulated by false promises. They don't fall for every advertisement. They don't waste their lives on trivialities. People with purpose stand taller. They endure more. They demand more. And that makes them harder to control. So here's the crossroads where you stand. You can keep running on the treadmill of pleasure, always chasing but never arriving. Or you can step off and begin building something that actually lasts. But let's be clear, this isn't easy. Purpose takes time. It takes discipline. It takes facing pain instead of avoiding it. And that's exactly why society keeps throwing distractions at you, because if you ever discover the power of purpose, you won't need the system anymore. You won't need its constant feed of pleasures. You won't be a docile consumer. You'll be free. So I want you to sit with this question tonight. What do you want your life to mean? Not just today, not just this week. What do you want it to stand for when you look back years from now? What is the mission that makes the struggle worth it? Because once you find that, you'll see the pleasures of this world for what they are, not chains, not masters, but occasional gifts along the journey. They'll no longer own you. You'll own them. And when that happens, you'll finally begin to live not as a slave to distraction, but as someone building something that truly matters. Because pleasure without purpose is empty. But purpose, even when it's painful, will fill your soul with something that pleasure never can, freedom. By now, you've seen the trap. You've seen how the relentless pursuit of pleasure can become a cage, how conditioning shapes your reflexes, how the elimination of pain weakens you, and how the absence of purpose leaves you empty. So the question that remains is this: what will you do with this knowledge? Because knowing the truth is one thing. Living differently is another. And make no mistake, choosing freedom in a world that thrives on distraction will make you stand out. It will make you uncomfortable. It will even make others uncomfortable around you. But that discomfort is the price of real freedom. Escaping the cycle of distraction begins with awareness, but it doesn't stop there. Awareness must turn into action. You have to decide, consciously and daily, to take your mind back from the system that profits off your weakness. And that's not easy, because everything around you is designed to pull you back into the loop. The algorithms want you scrolling. The companies want you consuming. The culture wants you entertained and compliant. If you go with the flow, you'll be swept away. Freedom means swimming against the current. The first choice you must make is to limit the hold pleasure has over you. This doesn't mean living like a monk or rejecting all joy. It means taking control of what controls you. Maybe it's turning off notifications. Maybe it's deleting one app that eats your time. Maybe it's fasting from social media for a week. At first, it will feel like withdrawal. Your brain will scream for the dopamine. You'll feel restless, anxious, even irritable. But if you hold the line, something powerful begins to happen. You start to recalibrate. You rediscover the joy of small things. A walk outside. A quiet conversation. A book without background noise. You begin to see how much of your need was really conditioning. The second choice is to rebuild your tolerance for discomfort. Sit in silence. Let yourself feel boredom. Don't rush to fill every gap. At first, it feels unbearable, but soon you realize that discomfort doesn't kill you. In fact, it sharpens you. It strengthens you. When you stop running from pain, you discover that pain loses its power to control you. And in that discovery, you grow resilient. You grow unshakable. You become the kind of person who doesn't collapse at the first sign of hardship because you've trained yourself to endure. The third choice is to question everything. Ask yourself why you do what you do. Why you buy what you buy. Why you chase what you chase. Who benefits from your habits? Who profits from your attention? When you start asking these questions, you begin to see how many of your so-called choices were never really yours. They were programmed. They were planted. And the moment you see that, you gain the power to rewrite the script. You stop being a puppet and start becoming the author of your own story. But the most important choice is this: you must replace pleasure with purpose. Because without purpose, the vacuum will suck you right back into distractions. Purpose is what gives you direction when everything else tries to pull you off course. Purpose is what fuels you when pleasure runs dry. Purpose is what makes the fight worth it. So ask yourself, what really matters to you? What do you want to build? What do you want to give? What do you want your life to mean? These are not easy questions, but they are the only ones that matter. Without them, you will drift. With them, you will stand firm. Now, here's the reality: when you start living this way, not everyone will cheer for you. Some people will admire you. Others will resent you. Some will even try to pull you back down. Because when you free yourself from the system, you hold up a mirror to everyone still trapped in it. And many people would rather stay comfortable than face the truth. They will call you extreme. They will say, "What's the big deal? Everyone lives this way." They'll try to convince you that nothing is wrong with endless entertainment, endless comfort, endless distraction. But you will know the truth. And the truth will set you apart. Real freedom is not the freedom to consume without limits. Real freedom is not the freedom to avoid pain. Real freedom is the ability to face discomfort, to think for yourself, to live with purpose even when it's hard. That kind of freedom doesn't come cheap. It comes with sacrifice. It comes with courage. It comes with the willingness to walk a path fewer people choose. But it's the only freedom worth having. So the choice is yours. You can continue as before, distracting yourself, chasing the next dopamine hit, living in a cage lined with pleasures that feel safe but keep you small. Or you can decide, right here and now, to take your mind back. To stop being a passive consumer and start being a conscious creator of your own life. To live not as a servant of pleasure, but as a person driven by purpose. And let me be clear, you don't have to get it perfect. You don't have to transform overnight. Freedom is not a one-time decision. It's a practice. It's the daily act of saying, "I will not be owned by distractions. I will not let comfort rob me of growth. I will live with intention." Every time you make that choice, you step closer to the kind of life Huxley feared we'd forget, a life of depth, a life of courage, a life of true freedom. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you see the cage, now that you understand the trap, what will you do? Will you keep scrolling, consuming, distracting until the years slip by unnoticed? Or will you rise, reclaim your mind, and build a life that actually matters? The system doesn't get to decide. The distractions don't get to decide. You do. And the moment you make that choice, you're already freer than most of the world around you. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below. I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.